Hi, Kip.
Hey Evan, how are you?
Good. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. So I haven't heard from Will. As far as I know, he's planning on being on. So
Yeah, I talked to him a couple days ago, but he
good.
hasn't responded recently.
Yeah. And I guess that Kay is he was either going to have something like a video pre-recorded, something like that. So
Yeah, I'm not sure if they, Will wasn't sure if they were going to do that or not, or if he was just going
okay.
to Kay's piece instead.
Right, right. That's fine. Whatever. And
Yeah,
again, both of us work with Kay, so any questions that they may have had for Kay, I'm sure we'll be able to
yeah,
answer it.
yeah. And very important question. How do you pronounce your last name?
Right. So it's phonetic. It's Kolsinskis. Kolsinskis. It's Lithuanian.
Okay, cool. My wife is half Ukrainian.
Oh, okay. Yeah, lots of difficult names of those Eastern Europeans.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Cool.
are you a Robinson and Cole employee?
I am. I'm not a planner. I'm a lawyer. We do
Oh,
have
okay.
planners on staff too, but yeah, I'm a land use lawyer,
Okay.
and um, I help put together programs for CCAPA,
Excellent.
continuing education credits. So, yeah,
Excellent. Yeah, that's the way to do it, is if you want to get at least on our end, if you want to get people engaged, if you can get involved in the continuing education credits, that's really a bonus for everyone.
yeah, definitely. And just in looking at your bio, I'm gonna introduce you as part of what I say at the beginning, but you have a lot of great experience too, which is very cool.
Yeah.
Are you
I,
at UConn as in some capacity now too?
well, I work as a consultant, so
Yeah.
UConn Extension is one of my clients, as well as American Farmland Trust and North Central Conservation District and Connecticut Farmland Trust. There's Will.
Oh, cool. Hey, Will.
Hello.
So one other person is going to join us in probably in a bit, and his name's Joel. He's the IT guy that
Oh, great.
so just in case anything happens, he'll be able to help out. Um,
Yes.
and we were planning, if okay with you, we were planning to record this and post this to CCAPA's YouTube channel. Do you guys have any issue with that? Is that okay?
That's fine with
That's
me.
great.
Cool. Um, so I'm just going to give a brief introduction about the program and the bios that you guys provided, then hand it over to you. I'll monitor questions. You can see there's a Q&A box at the bottom here. So oftentimes people type in questions during the program, and if Kip, you're speaking and Will, you see a question come in, you can feel free to respond in writing, or if you
Great.
and vice versa, or if you think it's a question that's worth talking about to the whole audience, feel free to address it live as well.
Great.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's a tough skill to have to respond to. It's good to have multiple people respond to Q&A while you're
yeah, it
giving a presentation. Yeah.
is.
I'm going to just make sure my screen share is working properly real quick.
Yep.
All right, how does that look? Are you seeing the whole like presenter view?
So yeah, we see this some slides in the bottom.
Okay,
Oh yeah, if you click presenter view, maybe that'll do it. Oh
that's the same.
yeah,
Yeah,
Joel will help us when he jumps on.
great.
Okay. Yeah, the technology piece can be challenging sometimes, so I'm glad
Oh, there
to,
you go. We got it.
That sort of, okay, great.
good, there you go.
All right, slides are advancing. Kip, you'll be starting us off, so feel free to just give me a verbal cue when you're ready for your next slide.
Okay,
It
sounds
looks like
good. That got a little weird, a little
Let me see if
small.
I can bump that up in
Okay.
seconds really quickly for you.
When you go through these conversions, sometimes weird things happen.
Yeah.
Mhm. All right, that's a little bit more legible.
Yep, a little more readable.
Okay. Great.
So Will is did Kay end up doing a video? You're basically gonna do his portion of his slides.
Yeah, I'm just gonna do his slides. It was
Okay,
a little
that's great.
simpler technology-wise.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Evan, where are you based in the state?
I am in Hartford.
Okay, great.
I live in West Hartford, but right now I'm in downtown Hartford in our building. Just to make sure my internet doesn't go out.
Yeah,
How about each of you guys?
I'm in Morris, which is just south of Litchfield in the western part of the state.
Okay.
I live in Manchester, but again, Will and I go all over the state
Yeah.
and beyond sometimes.
Yeah.
So whatever
I've lived in-
needs to be done.
Yeah, I've lived in West Hartford for a while, but I grew up in Norwich, the southeast.
Oh, okay.
Some nice farms down that way.
Yeah.
Well, there
And
was certainly a lot of coverage on that church that collapsed there in Norwich.
And
Yeah,
before the dam that collapsed.
There's Joel.
Yeah.
Evan, I can't remember. I think Kay was handling a lot of the coordination at the beginning, but did John Guskowski have something to do with making this connection? Okay.
Yeah,
great.
he did. I think Kay reached out to John originally, and then John made the introduction.
Great.
Hey, Evan, it's Joel just
Hey,
checking in
Joel.
with you. So I
Thanks.
can already see that the webinar has started. So folks are able to jump in at this point. So the practice session was exited and the actual webinar has started.
Okay. Great.
How do we fix that, or do we need to?
I can't go back on that one.
Okay.
Just know that folks are going to be able to be seeing and hearing what you're doing at this point. But I can help you out any other way if you need it, but I can't unfortunately undo that one.
That's okay.
No worries.
Be on our good behavior.
That's right. That's right. Any other questions or concerns that y'all might have that I can help you out with?
No, I think we're good. We'll just so we'll see everyone as they come in, and we'll just start the program.
Yeah, I already see one attendee that's already joined, so they'll filter in as soon as they go to click the link. Yep, they'll be good.
Great.
All right, no worries. I'll talk to y'all later.
Thanks,
Thank
Joel.
Okay,
Good
thanks.
session. Bye.
It's actually a little bit of sun here in Manchester. I don't know about Will out there. It looks like got a little bit of sun, huh?
Yeah, it's I would say it's a light gray today.
Yeah,
Looks like the weekend should be nice though. I've got some apple trees to prune, so I've been like holding out for sunny days.
Right. Yeah, that's a good reminder. I have an apple tree that I need to trim as well. So. And the deer didn't do all the trimming for you, huh?
No,
That's
I
good.
yeah, I started taking care of a family friend's orchard a few years ago, and so I've got, I don't know, 40 trees or so to visit.
Okay.
I'm gonna go ahead and get the screen share set up now, so when 1 o'clock comes around, just hit the ground running.
Sounds good. Yeah, about 3 or 4 minutes and we'll get started.
Okay.
Good afternoon, folks. We're just gonna wait another minute for people to trickle in here.
Maybe 1 more minute and then I'll kick things off, guys. Is that good?
Sounds good.
Perfect.
All right, so why don't we get started here? So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this program. My name is Evan Seaman. I am a land use lawyer at Robinson and Cole in Hartford, and I am also the chair of CCAPA's program committee. And CCAPA is very pleased to offer this really exciting program today, which is entitled CT Farmlink for Planners. This program is eligible for CM credit, and it also qualifies for the sustainability and resiliency credit, which I know is very enticing to many of you. So we have some excellent speakers for you today, and I hope that you'll walk away from this program with some new tools to help you identify unused or underused farmland in Connecticut, and learn some strategies to reinvigorate that land for agricultural purposes. So you'll hear about CT Farmlink, which since I believe 2006 has helped to connect farm owners with those seeking to utilize farmland throughout the state. And you'll also learn about Farmlink's pivotal role in making those connections and putting unused or underutilized land back to agricultural use. So we'll reserve some time at the end for questions. You'll see that there's a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen on the Zoom link. Feel free to type your questions in there, and we will respond to them either along the way in writing or at the end of the program. We'll reserve some time to answer them live. So I'd like to just briefly now introduce our speakers. We have two speakers this afternoon before I hand things over to them. First, we have Will O'Meara, who is the Connecticut field agent at Land for Good, as well as a vegetable farmer and advocate for farmers in Connecticut, as well as the region. Will's been farming in Connecticut since 2011 and is well aware of the challenges of finding secure access to land firsthand. Next up is Kip Kolsinskis. Kip works as a consulting conservation scientist, and his clients include both nonprofit organizations and government agencies. Much of the focus on his recent work has involved efforts to improve land access and affordability and to provide technical services to new and beginning farmers. Currently, Kip serves on the Yukon Extension Solid Ground Farmer Training Cadre, where he provides training and site assessments on land access, soil health, and climate change adaptation strategies. Kip was formerly the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service State Soil Scientist. Say that a couple times, try to get that right, for Connecticut and Rhode Island, where he worked extensively with farmers, educators, government, and nonprofits to help them protect farmland and wetlands. So with that introduction, Kip, I think you're up first, so I'd like to hand things over to you.
Okay, thanks, Evan. That was a great introduction, and I've certainly been privileged over the years to work with a number of very talented planners. Certainly, John Guskowski and Phil Chester come to mind as some of the folks that I've worked with specifically as relates to the agricultural community. Certainly respect the role of town planner in the state. And I think this is a great opportunity to talk about increasing land access for farmers in Connecticut and to help with some of the other goals, some of which Evan outlined as relates to growth management, land stewardship, biodiversity, climate change resiliency, food security, and other goals. So I think FarmLink offers a great tool and a great opportunity. Next slide. So, and again, our focus here is on land access, and Will certainly, firsthand has had that experience, but the National Young Farmers Coalition does surveys on a regular basis of their members. And you can see here, I cannot find affordable farmlands for sale. I cannot find affordable farmland for rent. Land costs more to rent than the value of what I can produce. So land access and secure land access, and probably we'll talk a little bit more about what that actually means, are really, really critical. And it's not just in Connecticut, it's across the whole country. It's been a real barrier. And we know too that there's a lot of land that's in play between generations. And so making that land available. And there's a lot of municipalities and institutions that own land. So thus our reason for coming and talking with you here today. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, this is, it's a problem across the country, and that no surprise to any of you, is Connecticut being the fourth most densely populated state in the country between Boston and New York. There's a lot of development pressure. And recently, American Farmland Trust updated some of that analysis, some really extensive GIS analysis called Farms Under Threat. And it was really what they found is that the major reason that we've lost so much farmland between 2001, 2016, and even today is that of low density residential development, so sprawl development of not just, you know, residential and commercial, but also large scale solar arrays and, you know, in this area too of distribution warehouses are a major influence there. Next slide. And so when the analysis was done and we think about this precious resource, this is not a top 12 list you want to be on. You can see there are 7 Connecticut top 12 most threatened states. So that's looking at the percentage of land that's lost and the percentage of land that's most threatened by development. So anything we can do to keep agriculture viable and land protected is critical, not only for the state, but for the nation. Next slide. So, you know, just not everyone is familiar with where agricultural land is, and the fact that we have agriculture in all 169 towns in the state. So in some cases it's urban agriculture, in some cases it's large dairy farms, and a considerable amount of it is rented. A lot of farmers rely on rented land, not only in their town, but in other towns. And that's true of urban agriculture as well. So, you know, of the 3.2 million acres, there's only about 381,000 that's in farms. And of that, that's, you know, a little less than 12%. And of that, only about 5.6% is in open fields. And that's an important point. So of a typical Connecticut farm, you know, almost half of it is probably in wetlands, riparian areas, and forests. So it's providing a lot of other ecosystem services as well as the productivity of the farm and all those other ecosystem services. Next. And if you could visualize that last slide and then look at this, that the remaining areas of our prime and important and locally important farmland soils have a very good correlation to where our dominant agricultural communities are. So, you know, the remaining agriculture in the state is concentrated in those areas that have the best soils. And though, as we know, those are areas that are the most easy to develop for residential because they perk well, large scale solar arrays, distribution centers, all those other threats to agriculture and that competition for land use. And just to clarify, because there's a lot of misunderstanding of what prime and important farmland soils are. Those are soils that have those unique physical and chemical properties most suitable for agriculture. It doesn't necessarily mean that they currently are in agricultural production, but they have that potential. Next slide. So when we think about it, what does it take for agriculture to be successful? So we just talked about having a secure land base of good soils that have been well protected over the generations, predictable weather patterns, and that's one of the real challenges for agriculture with climate change. And then we're working with them to increase adoption of climate smart practices. Needs to be economic viability and markets that can provide a living wage. We need those support services. So whether that's the equipment and the fertilizer dealers and the veterinarians need those support services, the markets, supportive educational research programs, adequate labor force. And then this is, you know, one of those things that you certainly have a lot of influence on: predictable and justifiable rules and regulations, informed elected officials, policymakers, consumers. Another one for you folks, compatible adjacent land uses, affordable land and housing, ability to transfer and share knowledge, you know, because the agricultural community is pretty spread out. We're continuing to try to find ways that they can share information, particularly between generations, which is the next one, which is, you know, something that Land for Good and Will can specialize with, is to help that succession of land and businesses between generations, to ability to innovate and adapt. And then we need to have a diversity of kinds of agriculture in Connecticut, in all towns and cities. And of course, realizing that, Connecticut's not an island, that we're part of the food shed for Boston, Providence, and New York as well. Next slide. So let's just take a little closer look at that. Is the economic impact. It's with the multiplier effect of businesses, it's an over 4 billion economic engine in the state with over 21,000 jobs. Environmental benefits, I could go on and on about this, but it's not just food. It's because of the amount of woodland, wetlands, and soils that can absorb water. It's really important for habitat, controlling flooding, protecting wetlands and watersheds, and maintaining air quality. And then the other thing is too, as we talk about our tax base issues in the state, that obviously those services studies have been done that farmland and forest land never require the municipal services that other land uses do. So they're a good deal for a town. And then more and more as we think about sustainability and access and environmental justice, of the importance of food security and equity, of having a reliable local and regional food supply. And we all witnessed that with COVID, of grocery stores being empty and lack of access to healthy foods. And then tourism. I know the governor has a big initiative to promote tourism. And again, thinking where we are between Boston and New York, there's unlimited opportunities there to increase tourism. And folks, particularly the younger generation, really likes to have an agricultural experience. So I think there's even more opportunities there. And our ability to leverage federal investments. So the Connecticut local and state dollars have the ability right now to leverage a lot of federal funds. So there's a lot of federal funds available that can help us with some of our goals here in Connecticut. Next slide. So, and again, some of these I talked a little bit about, but we'll talk just a little bit about more, is that the goal really is sustainability, that to be able to survive on this planet. And so having a diverse local and regional food systems and how we manage our organic wastes is really important component of that farms provide habitat and biodiversity. We talked about recharging groundwater. With the year that we've been through of flood storage and protection, scenic beauty, recreation, and then again, because I also work in climate change issues, the climate change mitigation adaptation, the fact that well-managed farmland can sequester and store carbon, provide renewable energy in our urban areas, help with that heat issue of cooling cities, provide migration paths for biodiversity, water management. And then another big issue, as we know, is how do we get organics out of the waste stream? And certainly agricultural land and agricultural producers can help us safely manage those organic wastes and get them out of the waste stream. Quality of life and social and environmental justice. Next slide. So, and again, thinking, we think about Connecticut and your role in Connecticut, and though think about the broader perspective. We're going to be one of the few parts of the country that sometimes we're going to have too much water, sometimes not enough, but we're going to have adequate water. Our growing season is getting longer and there's shifts in productivity. So there's an opportunity for our farmers to grow some different crops and develop a market niche where maybe they didn't have before, as other areas are going to lose their productivity because of climate change. So we have potential to expand and diversify, and the Northeast has 20% of the nation's population. So we're in the heart of the marketplace. So there's opportunities for job creation and growth. And that's something that's also forgotten as well, is that agriculture and farms are businesses. They're small and medium-sized businesses. And then this idea of protection of ecosystem services. And nationwide, more extreme weathers, floods and drought. There's going to be parts of the country that are going to be too hot for certain crops and for people to work out of doors. So, we're in the sweet spot there from a climate change perspective. Next. And again, looking at your role and an opportunity to be a resource for farmland owners and businesses is Do you know where your farms are and what they're producing, who their customers are? Their customers may be in multiple towns. Their customers may be, New York City or Boston. So where are your farms and what are they producing? And this idea of not only access to land, but secure access so that they can make investments in infrastructure and soil health and climate resilient practices, and to have farm-friendly permitting and regulations that are consistent. Supportive tax policies, there are some things that municipalities can do on their own as relates to tax policies that are really helpful, particularly as relates to farm buildings. And then develop strategies to protect farmland. There's still a lot of land that could be protective with willing landowners, with a conservation easement stays in private hands, or as a municipality, if you're protecting farmland, to make sure that it's used to its highest potential and providing all the things we know well-managed farmland can provide, and limit the impact of new development. It's very frustrating for farmers to have their most productive field and then have a house right next door with no buffer in between. So that's a really important tool of looking at the impact of new development on existing ag operations, and then having informed staff, commissions, and citizens to make sure that they understand what it's going to take to have agriculture be successful in their community, in their state. So look forward to further discussion, and any way that I can be useful to you, I would look forward to that opportunity. And I'll turn it over to you, Will.
Thanks, Kip. I'll talk a little bit more at the end about how specifically you might be able to utilize Kip's expertise through the FarmLink program. But for now, let me see. Kip, did you have anything to say about this slide?
Oh, yeah, just right. Sorry. Yeah,
No
I just the point, this last slide here, I forgot I wasn't on the last slide, is that you're not alone out there. I know that there's a lot that falls on your shoulders as a town planner, and that there is a lot of expertise out there. It's very frustrating when we see that a town has done something with a rule or regulation, or they're struggling on how to manage a certain piece of town-owned land, and there's a lot of expertise and funding that's available out there. So whether it's federal agencies, state agencies, nonprofit organizations, the university system, there's a lot of help and expertise that's out there. And again, will talk a little bit more of some other resources and ways to access that. Thanks.
Thank you, Kip. All right, so in my role at Land for Good, one of my primary functions is to work with farmers and landowners to understand the options available for land access and tenure, and to work through, typically in plain language, what they need out of an agreement to make these opportunities work for both parties. And so we do a lot of lease crafting. We work on succession plans, as Kip said earlier, and we do all sorts of educational events like this. And our goal is to make sure that all parties are making decisions with as much information as possible, and to hopefully save everybody a little bit of money in legal fees, so that when you walk into the attorney's office, you have more or less what you need to execute a sound agreement. So why would a municipality make land available to farmers? As I think we've heard from both Evan and Kip, the primary thing is that it aligns with the town's mission and goals. This is a place that we start with every client that we work with. We want to understand sort of what your values are, what your vision is, and what drives you to make these decisions. If that involves retaining agricultural productivity in your area, then there's a good chance that you're off to the right start. Farms do, as Kip mentioned, provide economic benefit to the town, and certainly contribute to that aesthetic, cultural, historic, or scenic value as well. And really importantly, farmers are active stewards of the land that they tend to. So one of the things that we hate to see is, you know, a piece of farmland that has fallen out of production and, you know, is grown up in invasive species, or erosion problems are allowed to, you know, sit and persist and get worse for many years. So, you know, there's the saying about the best fertilizer is the farmer's footprints in the soil, and I think that holds true to, you know, all kind of stewardship principles. Actively managed land is going to be in much better condition and contribute more to the overall health of the environment than unmanaged land. And finally, there's a strengthening of community that is possible as well. You know, our farm, we run a 100-member CSA. We have a partnership with the town of Morris, and they, you know, provide CSA shares for families in need in the town. We've hosted, you know, courses for the fire department at our farm. And we're not on town-owned land, but these are just some examples to think about of how farms can be sort of community hubs and achieve other goals and kind of strengthen the fabric of the community overall. So you might be curious what the process would look like if you wanted to and kind of engage in making land available to farmers. As I said, I think it's really important to start with vision and goals. This is a great place to kind of source feedback from the community, particularly if you have something like an ag commission or, you know, farmers and consumers that are heavily involved in the town. Definitely a good time to think about getting zoning and ordinance folks involved as well. And once you have clarity on that, then I think it's time to start understanding what the priorities of the farmers or potential tenants are. There are a lot of different ways to run a farm business, a lot of different enterprises, and so each of these situations and scenarios is going to be unique. So understanding kind of the piece of land that you got and the farmers in your area, the markets in your area is really crucial. I think you'll also want to, at this stage in the process, hone in on your stewardship goals. Are there other sort of complementary programs in town, grant funding that might be able to contribute towards making farmland, you know, more viable for somebody? You know, how is this interacting with existing wetlands or sensitive areas in town is a really important thing to do. And kind of along with this, you'll want to inventory what resources you have. This might include the natural resources on a piece of farmland, but this might also include, again, thinking about what other parties and players you want to get involved. You know, do you have an economic development commission in town that might have an interest in this sort of opportunity? Do you have somebody who might be able to provide business planning mentorship for a potential farmer, allowing you to maybe take a risk on somebody that would have less of an opportunity otherwise? So definitely, you know, be thinking about your human resources, your natural resources, infrastructural resources, and what have you. You'll want to also assess your financial needs. So we get a lot of questions about rental rates for farmland, and for most landowners, I think the going rates are disappointingly low, kind of towards the high end of the scale for the very best tillable agricultural land in the state. We typically see right around $350 per acre per year. If there is, you know, built infrastructure, barns, wells, utilities, then, you know, you might see rates go up from there. But, you know, understanding what you need to meet the town's bottom line is important, but you also want to be grounding that in what's affordable and realistic for a farmer. These last two steps, I think, are interchangeable depending on the scenario and kind of what your priorities are. But you'll want to be thinking about the terms of a potential lease and how you're going to recruit and negotiate with farmers through a request for proposals process. In some cases, it's really nice to have a draft lease to go out with that RFP material so that farmers kind of know what they're getting into. In other cases, you know, depending on the types of enterprises that farmers are proposing, they might want very different lease terms from kind of what you have in mind. So being open to change, as this quote on the left suggests, is really important. And I do think letting the farmers who are interested guide the process is really important. As this says, the way the land has been used in the past is not necessarily its most suitable use. New uses might be more appropriate. And I think what we see, particularly with the newest generation of farmers, is that they are innovative, they are risk takers, they are kind of pushing the envelope of how we think about agriculture, and that's a really good thing. So, be open to the possibility that someone's proposal might catch you off guard and surprise you. But as Kip said, there are resources to help you navigate those surprises. I want to talk quickly about leases versus licenses. Many towns do offer a license in place of a lease for these sorts of farmland arrangements. And Evan can probably speak a little bit better to this as an attorney. My sense is that many towns are averse to the risk of providing the farmer with more of an interest in the land through a lease. And the main issue is that in most cases, licenses are revocable. So if you had a change in political leadership in town, or I don't know, if you didn't have a system for dispute resolution in place with a potential farmer, then a license puts the farmer at much more risk to losing that land. This might be okay for someone like a hay farmer who's going to come and take a cutting of hay off, 3 times a year. But certainly for vegetables, livestock, dairy, any kind of perennial production, they really need the security of a lease and the sort of planning horizon that would allow them to make the necessary investments in the soil, equipment, infrastructure, what have you. And it does, leases do in transferring some of the interest in the property to the lessee, you are going to have, some increased liability as a result of that transaction. But these are all things that can be sorted out through, more concrete insurance and liability clauses in the lease, other parallel agreements as necessary to kind of dictate how the land is used, who has access, etc. All right. I wanted to talk quickly about some of the advantages and challenges of leasing municipal land. And these sort of flow both ways for both parties. But, I'm typically going to be speaking from the farmer's perspective as a farmer myself, and, in my role at Land for Good, an advocate for farmers. That's really the person in the transaction who I'm typically working for. So some advantages are that towns often, not in every case, but often don't need very much money from these transactions, so they can provide an affordable opportunity compared to some private landowners. As I mentioned, the community building aspect, timeliness, in some cases, I worked with the town of Naugatuck on a lease for some vegetable farmers. And I was gearing up for like a several month engagement as we, went through drafts of leases and so on and so forth. And they got it done in 4 days. So some towns are just really ready to bite the bullet. They know that this is something that they want to do. They're, ready to take feedback and execute something quickly. And so we always love when folks are decisive like that. Towns can provide a support structure. I think, working with a planner, somebody from a town office, they might be able to direct you towards other resources as necessary, and other people in town, other farmers or business owners that, might be able to support a new enterprise. A lack of debt. A lot of farmers, their ideal is to own land for good reason, but especially in the early stages of a business, leasing land frees up the capital to put towards things like equipment and infrastructure that if you take out a mortgage right away might be a challenge. And then farmland preservation. Kip and I both work a lot in helping farmers to understand the state's farmland preservation program and the corresponding national agricultural easement program. But the best way to preserve land is to have farmers actively using it. So I'm kind of putting this here as a broader understanding of the concept, and then likewise having a farmer actively using it might make it a clearer decision to enroll in one of these formal programs and even get some money for the town in return. All right, moving on to challenges. Rules and regulations can be tricky. Each town in Connecticut, as all of you are keenly aware, gets to make its own decisions about zoning and other ordinances and regulations. So for farmers, it can certainly be a challenge to navigate those. And even within towns, it can be a challenge. Our farm ran into an issue with an accessory dwelling. Most of the people that worked for the town agreed with us, and their hands were sort of tied by people who were on the zoning board and regulations that had been written some time ago. So being aware of how those rules and regulations stand and potential changes that could be helpful is a role that I think planners can play a big part in. A lack of equity. This is really speaking towards speaking to the farmers' lack of ability to own anything in these transactions aside from their equipment. So I think it is important to allow for certain temporary infrastructure to be put up, provided pathways for the farmer to invest in the things that they need, both as ways to improve the efficiency of the operation, but also as ways for them to kind of build up a balance sheet that allows them access to credit and all those important things for businesses. On the flip side of timeliness, some towns are really slow, and you probably know better about how your town operates than anyone. And so, providing a realistic timeline for farmer applicants, I think is helpful if it's going to be a drawn out progress. I've spoken a bit to restrictions. Unpredictability is a big challenge. One of the things that I hear a lot from farmers that have leased on town land is I don't have a point person to speak to when issues arise, which leads to a sort of unpredictable process of trying to resolve conflict, or if there is a piece of infrastructure, have a repair done in a timely manner, what have you. All of these things make it really hard for farmers to make decisions about their business, and so we always suggest to try and create the most clear path forward for the farmer, and having clear delegation for different aspects of communication and resolution between the two parties. Housing continues to be a massive problem for farmers all across the state. Not only for farmers that are leasing land, but also for hiring employees. So this is a place where we'd really love to see towns taking bold measures to address the lack of affordable housing for farmers and farm workers, whether that's through things like accessory dwellings or aggressively pursuing new affordable housing developments, ideally dense affordable housing developments that don't eat up our farmland as well. That's something that we're in desperate need of in cities and towns all across the state. And then infrastructure. Oftentimes Kip and I go out to assess a piece of land for a town or a land trust, and they're talking in idealistic terms about finding a vegetable farmer or someone else to come steward the land. And we get there and there's just the land, no water, no electricity, no structures of any kind. And for most farm businesses, you know, at the very least, water is going to be a crucial resource that they need to succeed, whether that's for livestock, irrigation, washing and packing vegetables, etc. So, if there is no built infrastructure on the land, you might consider investing in some of those things in order to make an opportunity more attractive, or again, making certain provisions to allow for farmers to make the investments they need. And I've just gotten into some of this. There is lots of unimproved land available. And again, the key things that people tend to need are water, electricity, and some sort of covered space. I put this picture in here. This is in my farm. We put up the 2 high tunnels on the left, which are for in-ground growing, and the heated propagation greenhouse on the right. These are crucial pieces of infrastructure for most farmers growing vegetables, flowers, any sort of annual plant production. And so, being aware of the types of infrastructure that farmers need is important. Having these conversations up front, and being open to building structures that are utilitarian and make a big difference for the viability of our farm businesses. And the lease term, when it comes to thinking about infrastructure, in every case possible, we want towns to be thinking on, as I said before, longer horizons for farm leases. We consider anything beneath 5 years to be a short-term lease, and getting into the 5 to 10 year range for vegetable farms is good. Longer than that is excellent, because these are businesses that require a kind of long-term scope of planning. And if you're going to be making investments in infrastructure as the farmer, the lease term, needs to match up with, the sort of planned life of those improvements. There is a lot of grant funding available for farmers. A historically large amount of grant funding currently through the Natural Resources and Conservation Service at USDA. And in order to utilize those grant funds, farmers need to have a lease term that's sufficiently long for the lifespan of those projects. So these 2 high tunnels on the left are one such example of that. And this is another image from our farm, which is a nice and easy way for me to build these presentations. This is a walk-in cooler. Again, a crucial piece of infrastructure for ensuring the quality and longevity of your products. And so this is not here to be permanent on our farm, but again, finding ways to work towards both longer term and shorter term solutions for the needs of the farmer is crucial. All right, with that, I'm going to jump right into our colleague Kay's slides. Kay was not able to join us today, and so I'm filling in. So if you see me looking down at more notes for this chunk of the presentation, please excuse my lack of eye contact or focus. So as Evan said in the outset, Farmlink's been around since 2006 as a platform for farmers to look for suitable pieces of land. And we do this in partnership with the Connecticut Department of Agriculture. And so Kip, Kay, and myself all have service agreements with the state to not only maintain this website so that farmers can search for opportunities, but also to serve as a team of experts to weigh in on everything from the quality of soils on the property in Kip's case to the condition and usability of infrastructure on site, and then finally the actual legal arrangements that provide the farmer with access to land. You'll also see there we have a resources tab, which is full of information on grants, educational programs, resources on how to create effective FarmLink postings, you name it. It's a great kind of clearinghouse, one-stop shop for both farmers and landowners to answer some of the questions that they often have. So here's our team. Kay primarily handles the kind of website end of things. So doing that initial triage with farmers and landowners to make sure that they have a good opportunity and a good sense of what they're looking for. Once Kay handles that initial inquiry, Kip and I often go out to the farms, out to the sites to kind of assess the natural resources, infrastructure, and what have you. And then again, getting on to the kind of concrete negotiation and legal agreements with a whole lot of steps between. And we often field requests that have absolutely nothing to do with our particular service area, but we have a really good sense after doing this work for, well, in my case, for about 6 years now. We know where to point you in the right direction. So if any questions at all come up regarding farming, farmland, farmers, we're happy to point you in the right direction. So again, just talking about the process a little bit more. As a town planner, you should do, as Kip said, an inventory of available land in your town. Once you identify those parcels, if you're unsure about its potential, we're always happy to come out and do an on-site investigation. And during this process, we tend to get into some really good conversations about, what it is you're looking for, how you might conduct outreach, past uses of that piece of land, and anything else that comes up. Really importantly, we always want towns to have a really concrete request for proposal process for making these opportunities available. And this is a place that we can, using our experience, help you to draft those requests for proposals. We sort of have a good sense of what it is the farmers are looking for from those. And I think we can help you to ask questions that are going to illuminate the information you need from the farmers' applications. So I think, in any given year, we probably provide input on half a dozen or so of these. We'd love for it to be more. So definitely reach out if this is something you're considering. And the online platform itself, we currently have over 500 farmers actively looking for land. This typically is, we typically have 5-to-1 farmers to land opportunities on the website or more. And so we really need high quality, land opportunities as frequently as we can updated on the site. We are seeing that farmers are moving to New England from across the country in face of climate challenges and other economic challenges that farmers are facing. And so we need to mobilize all of the available land that we can in order to, provide a strong agricultural future for our region. Let's see. Yeah, and just to close on the presentation portion of the program, the website, the technical assistance is great, but we are here to strengthen the agricultural community as a whole, and provide a conduit between the folks who have land that they want to make available to farmers, and think about how we're going to develop our food system, steward our resources, mitigate climate change, and more. So, as you're thinking through these big issues, please keep farmland in mind, because it intersects with a lot of other issues that our towns in Connecticut are facing. But thank you all so much for taking the time today to listen to us drone on about this. I was stunned that 46 of you came. I'm really, really glad that you're all here, and look forward to answering some questions for you.
That's great, Will. Evan, let me just, while I think of it, just add two pieces. One is that I'm not sure that mentioned, Will said certainly funding comes through the Connecticut Department of Agriculture, but the funding is actually to the Department of Ag from the Community Investment Act. So, again, that's one of those great kind of things that happen with the Community Investment Act. So that's where the funding comes from. So, when you're talking with your legislative leaders in town and they want to know what happens with the Community Investment Act, this is one of those things the Community Investment Act funds. And then the other thing is that I think that, Kay and Will and I, particularly Kay, can really help. As he mentioned, Will was talking about the RFPs, but individual landowners, as far as crafting what they're going to post, either the landowner or the farm seeker, so that it really portrays, an accurate representation of what's available and what their expectations are. And that's one of those things that I think we're going to continue to work on is, in some cases, particularly with that they're not as robust as we need them to be. So we're going to work on that a little bit more. But again, Kay is very willing to help people craft their postings for land or for a farm seeker. And I'll stop there.
Thanks, Kip.
Thank you both, Kip and Will, for that excellent presentation. And I know I have a couple of questions that I wanted to ask you. And if folks have any additional questions, please type them into the Q&A box on the bottom of the screen here, and we can get to them. But I guess the first question I wanted to ask relates to regulations and ordinances that you mentioned, and obviously those can provide a good incentive in some cases, and also challenges in others. And what I'm wondering is, you mentioned housing, affordable housing is a big issue, and that's something that's, I guess, not directly related to farming, as you might think, but it's a critical component to have a business be successful. Are there model regulations out there, or are there things that you think that you've seen work well, or that you've seen have not worked well in that area? I think that's something that some of the folks on this call might be interested in. And I'm sure a lot of the times, some of the regulations on the books that might make it difficult for folks to find land are not intended to keep them out. It's just, not everyone realizes what the consequences are of having those regulations. So anything you can speak on that about?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned the having flexibility for accessory dwellings is really, that's one good concrete step that people can take. This is a controversial statement, but 2-acre housing lots, I think, has been one of the most destructive forces for both farmland development and low density sprawl, as Kip talked about, but also affecting, housing. So, think about like places in Vermont that have really adhered to the sort of like village sort of mentality in terms of development, having these much more dense and higher town centers that provide some of those really crucial size and type of housing units that provide for people that transition between maybe living in an urban area and a rural area. That's one thing that I'd like to see more of. I don't have exact language demonstrating that, but it's something I can certainly dig for. Kip, I'm sure you've got some thoughts on that question as well.
Yeah, well, again, I would say, as far as being successful with farming in Connecticut, you're certainly more likely to be put out of business by your neighbors than anything else. So than any state or federal regulator. So paying attention to things like, as I mentioned there, when you have residential development right up to the edge of a farming field, that's really difficult. Not having a buffer, making it really difficult for fences. You know, if you're a vegetable farmer, if you need either have electric or in some cases a 7 or 8 foot fence to keep the deer out, or the deer will eat you alive. So it shouldn't be onerous to be able to get approval for a fence, and very inconsistent as far as of agricultural buildings and structures, because from a conservation standpoint, a high tunnel where people are planting in the ground is not a structure, it's a temporary conservation practice. So in some cases, people are being very restrictive on the location and size for something that's a temporary structure, and that's been really challenging. And I would say the other is that there's really an unmet demand in the state for sustainable meat production. And so animal agriculture regulations, and I understand, you know, the past history and of animal agriculture and manure management can be difficult, and though there are professionals to help you with that, it needs to be based on sound science and best management practices. There are towns that say you can't have more than 2 chickens per acre. So if someone wants to do, you know, a laying hen operation or pasture raised chickens, well, you've taken away a business opportunity for them. And then the other thing, of course, would be, you know, as we look at, as Will said, people can surprise you of the variety of agricultural production. So, you know, it could be a piece of town woodland where somebody wants to rent for maple taps, or the other one, of course, is that processing, creating added value products is really important to being economically viable. And then agritourism. So again, the whole concept of agritourism, where it benefits the business but doesn't become you know, a distraction to the community, deserves careful recognition. But those are tools: added value and agritourism and animal agriculture are 3 things that it seems like regulations and what we would call farm-friendly regulations really make a difference.
All right, we've got another question. Will, were you going to say something?
Yeah, just quickly to come back to the housing note, one resource that has been helpful for me is the Connecticut Center for Housing Opportunity. I've worked with Jocelyn Ayer, who previously did work with the Northwestern COG. And so, you know, if that's a place that you're, you know, interested in finding out more, they've been a really helpful resource for me in the past. I just put that in the chat for everyone. Sorry, Evan, go right ahead.
All right, great. We do have another question that came in. So given your depth of knowledge and experience in viewing agriculture as a land use, how would you characterize any changes that you've seen happen since you first got in the field compared to today? In other words, are you more or less optimistic for the future of agriculture as a viable land use in Connecticut?
I'll let you go first, Will, since you're trying to make a living as a farmer.
Sure.
You've got to be optimistic. It's your job, right?
I was gonna say, like, if farmers weren't optimists, then we wouldn't be in the profession, because you have to be able to bounce back from the you know, inevitable challenges and hiccups that happen. I think I'm extremely optimistic in the farmers that are kind of coming up and really addressing these issues of climate mitigation and adjusting, you know, markets and enterprises head on. I have full faith in those farmers to you know, execute these plans in a really thoughtful and successful way. Where I am a bit more pessimistic is that since the pandemic, we've seen you know, real estate values explode in a way that doesn't at all match up with the economic reality of farmers in our state. And so yeah, we need to be addressing the affordability issue for farmers and ensuring that, you know, our rural land can remain a working rural landscape rather than kind of transition into more of an estate or you know, second home sort of environment, which, you know, certainly in my neck of the woods in Litchfield County has been the trend for the last couple of years. So that's my quick take on it. Kip?
Sure, yeah. Well, I would say, from and take a little bit of a historical perspective here is that, originally Connecticut was dominantly, dairy, tobacco, and poultry. And that it is diversified so much that it's incredible and it's exciting. And though being one of the older states in the nation, basically we lost all of our infrastructure for our local and regional food system. So we're having to recreate those as far as food hubs and processing and slaughterhouses. So, so there's a lack of that capacity of middle people to be able to aggregate. And then the other challenge, of course, is Will said everything, takes longer and costs more here. So the willingness to pay. So, the consumer, which again, I'm sure Will has seen this, that you have a customer that's driving up in a $70,000 vehicle and they're trying to nickel and dime you over the cost of a tomato. So are people willing to pay? And there are, well, for those that and local food doesn't always cost more, but we have this cheap food perspective in this country, not based on what it really costs to have sustainable grown food. So, in which case, and some of the conservation practices and climate smart practices that Will and others have to utilize, they're not fully funded by the government. So, is there an opportunity for ecosystem payments to help with the cost for some of the things that need to be done, which benefit us all, just as Will was talking about, local food supply, of being able to supply food to food kitchens, and for those that maybe can't typically afford a CSA share. It's all in our best interest to make sure that everyone is healthy. And again, the nature-based solutions from a climate change perspective, one of the best things that you can do in your municipality is to protect as much farmland and forest land and keep it in viable production as possible, because the impervious surfaces are friggin' killing us. So getting water in the ground and keeping the biodiversity intact is one of the best things we can do from a mitigation and adaptation standpoint, as well as, getting organics out of the waste stream and getting them applied correctly on agriculture and suburban land.
Great.
Oh yeah,
Well,
and Will's putting some resources in the chat there. Yeah, if you haven't looked at which we recently updated, the Planning for Agricultural Guide in Connecticut and the Conservation Options for Connecticut Farmland, those are two really good publications with some really, really good ideas.
excellent. So we have just 1 minute left, and want to be respectful of everyone's time, and wanted to thank you, Kip, and you, Will, very much for participating in this excellent program, which is going to be posted on CCAPA's YouTube channel. Thank you for everyone joining today, and I wanted to give both you guys, Will and Kip, the opportunity for any final last words, whatever they might be.
Please reach out to us with any any and every question, as I said, related to agriculture. We're more than happy to come out to your towns. I think the last thing I'd like to emphasize is even if you're not dealing with town-owned land, I think planners can be a really helpful intervention point for kind of what's happening in town. And so if you even hear of things going on related to agriculture in town and would like us to weigh in or reach out to somebody, definitely be in touch.
Yeah, and I would offer, again, those are great suggestions, Will, is that, I realize that a lot of times, as Will mentioned, what's going on in the community, and you're having conversations about landowners about what they're going to do with their land. And, again, they're private landowners, that there is help that's available for, selling a conservation easement, help with a lease, technical and financial assistance for conservation practices. So, and also if someone needs help, putting their information on Farmlink, that we can certainly guarantee that. And so, you know, we're all in this together. And so I really value the role of town planners in sustainability and ability to live on this planet and not have to go find another one.
That's a good point to end on. Well, thank you again, guys. Really appreciate it. Hope everyone who attended today. I know everyone who attended today learned some really valuable information. So thanks to all of you. Look forward to speaking with you guys more, and hopefully we can do this again sometime soon.
Yeah,
Sounds good.
anytime.
All right.
Thanks, Evan.
Take care. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Kip.
Bye.